Colin McNamara. I'm a local entrepreneur. I also founded Austin's AI Mug, AI Middleware User Group. Who here knows about it? 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool. We meet the first Wednesday of every month, and we basically present back to each other for like 15-minute segments on research that we've done that month. It is completely learning in the open, no pitches. I kick those people out. We've been going for about 2.5 years, 1,700 members, about 50 to 100 people show up between online and in person. So I love it. People who've been there, do you like it?
Love it.
Love it. Awesome. Cool. Well, and I'm glad to see you. So again, I'll get on to talking about what I'm going to talk about today, which is taking my anxiety, which who deals with anxiety, right? Okay, you've all been in ops. Gotcha. So I've taken my anxiety in a startup that I built. And really, the story starts at 4:30 in the morning, waking up and getting a call that, what is this? Oh, yeah. I got a $73,000 chargeback in this food tech business that I started a few years ago, right? So what had happened was the FDA rules for labeling a package had changed between label validation and the product actually shipping. Specifically, the California portions of it, which the fine for those bottles showing up on the shelf at Sprouts were $10,000 a bottle. Yeah, yeah. Fuck my life, right? Sorry, we're on recording. Personally liable, I own 49% of the business and the sole manager of it now. I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning with like, holy smokes, I'm gonna lose my house, right? So a little bit of numbers of the business that we built. In 3 years, bootstrapping, we built a business doing $9 million ARR, run rate business, serving 480 stores across 24 states. With 7 SKUs, so 7 product SKUs. You can go into Sprouts right now and get the 56-ounce smoothies. You can get pie crust. You can get these really cool 8 Amish dairies, pull in some grass-fed milk. Actually use satellite data to see whether the cows are pooping on the grass. It's kind of cool. And for me personally, that was 3 years of my life. And I was at 150% utilization, and I managed to automate myself down to 5% in that to get to where I should be as an owner in a business, actually managing the numbers versus managing the work. The first 2 years of that business were really, really fun. I basically, as a kind of not so crappy software developer, a 20% developer, I always call myself. I'm about 8% now. I sat side by side in the concept to cash. So how do you actually take a product that you see on the shelf and take it from a concept? Like the retailer's like, hey, this branded product is selling like hotcakes, they're making millions. We want to copy it and turn it into a store brand. And then going through that entire process of reformulating and take all the stuff that'll give you cancer, make your kids stupid, putting it in recyclable packaging, optimizing distribution, working with manufacturing lines to make sure they run in the right ways all the times. Super fun. Ended up focusing on a lot of applications that were in that space, such as label validation, things that we're in the food. When you're dealing with food and drug, you can kill people if you get it wrong. And if you're a fiduciary, it means you can go to jail if you kill people, right? So I built a bunch of AI applications inside of there that made sure that happened safe and checked every time. Applying software development tools and methodologies we all use every day. Year 3 was complete hell. That was operations. That was when I was getting these $73,000 bills, when every single distributor was trying to screw me, where every manufacturer had their head so firmly planted up their asses, I couldn't pull it out with 2 hands, right? So in that space, I slept 4 hours a night for 5 months, waking up every single morning because one missed email would be a disaster. The reality is when you're starting any, like who's done a startup before? You have every single hat on and you're like, there's 10 more that you need to swap in, right? You're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And in the food tech space, in the food supply chain, everyone is connected to everyone. It's this giant web. They call it the chain, but it's like a mesh, really. And it's like a dirty fishing net. It is broken, it is stinky, it has people moving pallets, it has crumpled up papers that truckers that probably on meth took pictures of and scanned and sent back into your system, and you have to figure out what the heck's going on. It is hell. There is 50 touch points for everything, spreadsheets, emails, PDFs, phone calls. One thing goes wrong and you're out of business, right? So for me, what it started when we went into production was, my old pattern of, oh crap, I have anxiety. I'm going to lose my house today. have like a 5 to 10 minute spiral, or I'm completely losing my mind. Then the Marine pops in. I'm like, okay, Marines, right? Power through it, right? And then be completely exhausted, having adrenaline dumps all day long, right? And you're living in cortisol. You're like, what the hell is happening to my body? I look like I'm 90, right? And how did I deal with this? Right? The new pattern in this was I get the anxiety, I'd wake up at 4:30 a.m., completely soaking the sheets, absolute nervous systems like, Colin, you're freaking crazy for doing this, but you got to fix it because you have no way out. And I'd hop into Claude Code. I would start hacking, right? I would end up with working code that would actually provide, it ended up being pretty much an anti-fraud engine for the supply chain. I built my own ERP system with 21 different Python modules that was connected into Claude via skills and CLIs, and ended up with automated reporting. It was pretty cool. In a sense, I was running with scissors, and I'm glad I didn't stab myself, but it actually saved me probably from a full nervous breakdown. I got pretty damn close to it, I won't lie. But it saved me from the loony bin. The ability to actually take that anxiety, and instead of being dependent on an external vendor, instead of having to talk to a software development team, instead of having to have an operations staff sucking all my profit out, right? And if you're managing one, they're going to screw you over. That's just how it works, right? I was able to actually build a working system, and that I was able to get into Claude Code, and not have to log into like an EDI system, not have to look at a crumpled up spreadsheet, be like, what the heck is going on? Oh, I got to compute some weird commission for someone who gave me a hookup to solve a problem because you have to like do that to make this work in this world. Easy, simple questions, complex systems out in English. What the hell? So cool. So I talked about a little bit what I built. I talked about the FDA design tools. Right, so things called like built NutriCalc is the first thing. So anytime you're doing formulations, right, you're cloning that product, right, you have to go ahead and send out samples to the different retailers or whatnot. And thing is, like, and again, I get back to this: if you get it wrong with the allergen statement, you may kill someone. You don't want to kill your customers. It's not good for business. Right? So I built NutriCalc. So because we'd literally be doing bench tests, and we have to hit the 6 p.m. FedEx to the East Coast, right? So they say cold at night if you're doing it in the summer. And well, you just finished your formulation and you have 10 minutes to get this out. It's a day to do it by hand, right? So what do you know? Python. In this case, this is before Claude Code when I did that. And I talked a little bit about, this is a funny story. I won't name the person, although if you're in the industry, you know who the person is. If in the recording. Let me see how I can say this. Someone ordered $1 million of pork empanadas and put a kosher logo on it. Pork empanadas, $1 million, right? And so I'm like, okay, I'm never doing this out of my wallet. So I created Kosher Catcher, which was the first integration of our label validation tools, which became a compliance tool, which would go through all the FDA CFRs, which are the specific little rules of like, organic can be here, this can't be with here, it has to be like this type of kerning, this type of space. Saved me like 6 months and $3,600 per turn, per label. And then of course, just had a lawyer check it off at the end because I don't want to be liable for that. And then the second side, I talk about the supply chain operations, which is effectively, I was an architect at Oracle for 4 years. I ran an SRE organization that was basically escalation for all of SaaS, had global networks for 64 data centers around the world for all of Oracle SaaS platforms. And if has anyone like worked on the network? One? Okay, so the rest of you blamed him for everything that was wrong, right? I can't fix a system, it must be the network, right? So yeah, I definitely got deep in the dark in the guts of what makes an ERP system break. And so I built one that broke in its own ways. So I talked a little bit about what we did here, NutriCalc, compliance calculator. I also built an AI mass spectrometer, saved me $50,000 a turn. Now on the design tools, almost all of them were in LangGraph, by the way. And the cool thing about this was that, so LangGraph, who's aware of what LangGraph is? Right, it's a directed acyclic graph that operates in bulk synchronous parallel. Basically, each step moves forward at once, And the cool thing about that, and this is a pattern that I've used in food and drug, I've used in nuclear, I'm also using in legal now, is that you can log each of those agentic steps to your OTel pipeline with the business KPI, and then have LM as a judge looking at it. Now you have a self-auditing system completely. And like, from a person who is responsible for compliance in the food and drug space, who can like, go to jail type of things, right? On the design side also, we had did a bunch of sustainability stuff, which is like important to do. It's annoying, but it's annoying to do at the same time. The important thing on here that I want to communicate to the community here is that pattern of using a graph architecture or your agent architecture, and when your agent is making that decision, backing it with a log to your OTel stream with that KPI allows you to pull that KPI out from your log stream and have a report of this is what my agent did, and this is what it thought, and this is what it maps into a report. And if any of you are doing, anyone do federal work? No one. Okay, well, you should look at FedRAMP 20X because it's going to filter down to the rest of the audits. So in federal work, so if you're doing any sort of Nuclear Regulatory Commission or Department of Energy or warfighting work, you'll end up with a new FedRAMP high. That's a high, it's IL 1 through 6 for like all the spooks and stuff, but the general federal government stuff, FedRAMP high is what you'll build to. 20X means 80% of your audits have to be automated. So think about that. If anyone SOC 2, PCI, anyone? Okay, a couple people. That's all coming downhill. So automate, automate, automate. That's this pattern of having your graph architecture self-documenting is like really, really powerful. I talked a little bit about the supply chain operations. I won't go into it too deeply, but there's some really interesting things I learned inside of here. One, scanning documents now with AI is still weird. Right? But AI writing software, there's a whole bunch of pre-processing scanners, and I'll have to thank my friends at AIMUG, and specifically Dimitri. We all know Dimitri, tall, probably autistic, 150 IQ guy, right? Was a researcher at Amazon. There's so much stuff you can do with image, what's called image scanning software within Claude Code. I got better results than Google's own image classifications services that they expose. Other fun things that I was able to do into this very, very simply. One, Playwright in LangGraph with some user emulation where you can shake your mouse and stuff like that. So it looks like is amazingly great for scraping vendor sites that don't have APIs, right? It easily outputs into different JSON files, download all the PDFs, you can bring it into your imaging pipelines. Really, really great. I was actually really impressed with what I was able to do inside of there. And has anyone used Google's Workspace CLI? You should use it yesterday. That and GAM for audits, right? Command line tool, you can integrate into your Claude Code. You can pull emails in and out. You can send your emails. I absolutely live in Claude Code, and I just have it pop my drafts up, right? And I edit and send the final draft completely, right? So, I mean, I live in Claude Code. The things that were really interesting, and this is the first time that I started playing with skills. So this was, guys, probably somewhere in the fall of last year, Q4, we kind of hit the hockey stick. Is anyone building skills with CLI integrations for your tools yet? 1, 2, 3. Okay, I see the advertising kid who learned how to make applications. By the way, I'm spending a lot of time at Antler Venture Capital, usually Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays now. All the 24-year-olds are like totally schooling us old fucks of how to like write software now. There's a skill creator pack inside of Claude Code. And Andres, how did you create your skill? Or have you created skills yet?
Using Claude Code itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like write them, but I know what I need and just ask it.
Absolutely. I created this presentation using a skill. Yeah, absolutely. So basically what's really cool is that anytime you have a CLI integration, right, kubectl, right, you can write a skill to go ahead and access that. And then you just have to you can just type or you can talk in English. It's freaking great. Super easy. And then when you write your CLI for any of the applications you write, the features are self-documenting, right? Because your CLI is mapping to the features and functions of your application modules, right? It's actually really, really cool. We'll see if, I don't know if I will sell it. I don't know, I had a grand idea about that. We'll see how it goes. The fun thing too is that when you write your tool chains that are integrated with skills and CLIs, now you have access to like Opus 4.6. So you can start to take that data out and then really start to do some really interesting features. fun things that are really helpful for me. I have a legal contracts skill that I wrote. I have a litigation skill that I wrote, because guess what? Anytime you have significant equity in a business, you are going to court, right? I have a forensic accounting skill, which has absolutely screwed people over. It is stuff you can build yourself. You can literally do the skill builder, and it is great. Let me see. The outputs that these go to were dashboards, Gemini GPT, and all that fun stuff, and automated email reports. So this is something that if I would have wanted to get Larry to do this, it would have taken $300,000 in 8 months to do it on NetSuite. And I did it at like a couple months at 4 a.m., 4:30 in the morning, cold sweat mornings, right? You can do it yourself. Now, I was talking about the business systems itself, but more importantly, who's running the founder, right? Because I talked about 5 months of 4-hour night's sleep, right? My brain was not working at 1,000%, right? And I'm old now, so I don't know if it works that good anyways. So Ricky Peruccio from AI Mug got me started on this concept. And this concept is an extended cognition, or exocortex. Is anyone familiar with this, of like creating a data lake where you utilize your, where you create a data lake? I use Markdown files using Obsidian to visualize them. But does anyone do something like this? 1, 2, 3, 4. This guy does. He's not admitting to it, right? Now, this is really, really powerful. And from a founder's perspective, you're putting on those 7 hats, right? You're expected to make quick decisions. You're expected to have a lot of data. So for a lot of my life, in the last 20 months, I have all my data that comes into these data lakes, right? And they're more and more secured as time goes on. The reality is this is a big front that you expose to hackers, to litigation, to stuff like this. So there's ways that you can protect yourself inside of there. There's different ways that you can structure protections legally, but also in encrypted fashion. And I've been exploring this later in some of the things that have come out of this. But the stack that I've been using is Obsidian with multiple vaults and repos. Claude Code, hands down, 1,000 times my best friend, with Codex to do QAPRs going back and forth, because Claude is not good with numbers, but it's good at big thinking. And of course, different skills and MCPs, although most of my MCPs I don't really use anymore. I did create a bunch of agents that run inside of this, right? So, agents, and then more of these now have been migrating to specific skills that can be pulled into any agent, right? So I have my founder agent, a leadership agent. I have a Quit AI now. So if you go to quit.ai, you'll see a e-discovery agent. I have FraudBot that runs on top of the system and also connects into our Google Workspace that looks for artificial intelligence agents and also people using AI as insider threats. It's highly effective. Won't talk about its results on camera, but highly effective. And then research agents, which are really, really important, right? So bringing data into that data lake. And one thing I'll talk about for those that are new to this concept of an exocortex, let me see, 3 years ago, I left OCI. I was like the 301st employee at OCI. Clay McGork was my skip level manager. He's the current CEO of Oracle, co-CEO. He was my skip level until my boss blew his brains out. Hard place to work, put it that way. But one of the things that was like just beat into me was the Amazon way. It was like 80% Amazon and 20% Google at OCI. Was the Amazon way of document-driven decision-making. So like you write a document, you spend the first 20 minutes reading in the meeting, right? And then you get a bunch of people picking your wording apart. Having that structure driven by AI agents is so incredibly powerful. Especially when you're having you have a conversation, you have it distilled down, you have your journaling, you distill down, you have your daily note of, everyone, if you're writing software, you should have your patent log, right? You should have your inventions log. It stops you from getting sued, even if you're not getting patent. You can do these things using these tools, but then once you have that data inputted, you can use your agents to enrich it, to create context, to link things together. And what I found over like 20 months of this, amazing amount of traction. One of the pieces of traction that came out of this, one of the tools that I use, I've kind of hinted about this as a business owner, you're going to get in litigation. Absolutely. As a software developer, you may get in litigation, right? Being able to use programmatic tool chains to collect evidence super important. So I created a quit.ai, which is an open source set of open source tool chains. We have exhibit control, which I talked about at AMA a week or two ago. Is MIT licensed right now. I'm looking for contributors, by the way. So code reviewers, contributors, as I'm porting it from my internal tool chains out. This is an agentic-based, agentically developed, agentically controlled, but Python-based evidence management platform that allows you to connect into what you call it, Google Workspace. Looking for O365 users, by the way, so we can port it into there and create a full chain of custody, SHA-256 hash evidentiary tool chain that has evidence manifest, what's called lawyer briefings and stuff like that. It's really, really cool. And the goal of this, by the way, is that so let me see, collection works, verify works, classification works, attorney briefings work, court-ready presentations, and then we actually do timeline reconstruction already in it. So like I mean, you can look up on Travis County. There's a litigation I'm involved in that I got sued frivolously. And I responded back with a 15, I responded back, I got sued with like an eight page brief, and we responded back with a 20-page petition with 15 pieces of evidence, spearphished, just like destroying, absolutely destroying. The person likely won't even show up to their own court date, destroying them using this tool chain. So happy to release that into the world. The next tool that was really, really important for me that I use in my tool chain is FraudBot. Originally developed this for a friend's energy company who was using ClaudeBot. I'm like, yo, dude, we don't want to go there. So I'm like, how about we lock things down? FraudBot is a behavioral anomaly detection that I created. I have to get clearance from my lawyer to release this one, but I want to. Years ago, I had the chance to work with Dr. Coggeshall, who invented the FICO score. We created ID Analytics, which is bought by LifeLock, is now in LexisNexis, is basically identity theft doing high-dimensional math for identity theft management. Use some of the same tools to do statistical analysis of patterns across Google Workspace. And by the way, you can do this yourself. Like high-dimensional math is really, really easy to do now using Claude Code. And then brings things up into like a 4-stage classifier where it can do like semantic search, graph search, graph entities, can do classifications across time. It's not only has it allowed me to, it's really allowed me to look through logs and see what's been happening, but also there's a really interesting thing that a security researcher brought me into, which was the ontology of fraud, right? So ontology, and this is, I think, really interesting to share with the community. So, and like, I'm not a math whiz. I learned trigonometry on the front windscreen of a race car, written in grease pencil by a friend of mine who just happened to be the engineering officer for the Kitty Hawk, right? So I learned from a smart person, but like I've learned it in real world. Like I learned statistics from Dr. Coggeshall when he was teaching analytics classes on Tuesday after work, right? I never finished college. But math works in this. The problem is that large language models are not natively speaking math. But what I learned really was a really interesting thing that I learned building FraudBot was that you can take an ontology and map your statistics into the ontology, and now the large language model, because what's an ontology? A simple word goes to a big concept. It's like I can spend an entire paragraph exhausting my context of describing a failure mode and effects analysis, right? What you would do for each step, but the LM's already pre-trained with what a failure mode and effects analysis. I don't even have to call it failure mode and effects analysis. I call it FEMA. Put in the context of run this through. Well, the same thing is true about the ontology. When I threw on the ontology of crime, it was able to take the statistical analysis that was bubbling up and like just went boom. And again, put it into a CLI, expose it into Claude, and you're like, okay, what are these people? What type of fraud is happening on my infrastructure today? Right? Really, really cool. And you can build this yourself. This is not like research lab stuff. This is Colin having to deal with issues running his business and staying up till 6 a.m. in the morning because I'm a nerd, right? Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
You get access to your systems?
Yes, I have access to my systems.
Then the agents are waiting for Rodeo to do that task. They need access to certain.
Yes, yeah. So you can give it access to your audit logs. You can give it access to a Google Takeout. You can give it access to so inside, if you're in a business in Texas, you have statutory access rights as what's a manager or director. Effectively, this business was set up as originally as effectively like 2 board of directors. I'm the sole remaining one right now. But you have access to a message inspection, but then also as a Google domain super administrator. Now, having access and rights are certain things you can't do. Right, so it's very important inside of your agent configs to be aware of your do not goes, right? And query, ask it, and then update your Claude MDs, right? There's different ways you can be safe, but just the same as if you were in a corporation and you're doing a cert response, right? There's certain things like you have to subpoena an IP, for example, so you can get to the point of doing an ARIN lookup, but you just be responsible. Right, that type of stuff. But yeah, if you can turn on the audit log function of your Google domain, and that's well within the standard functions of a Google administrator, and you can pull all that down into whatever data set you want to and run it off. Yeah, it is amazing. Stats first. Simple things like, what if a user is, well, I'm not going to talk about specifics, but file access patterns, 1, 2, 5, 5,000, what's wrong here, right? Okay, so there's a difference in my file access pattern. What do? You expand scope, right? It's been like 21 years since my CSSP, so I'm saying the wrong thing. It might be just because I'm old. But yeah, this is gonna go on YouTube, right? Okay, cool. I won't tell a really cool story, but I'll tell it to you in person. So I might ask you to cut a few things, but I'll talk about this one later. If anyone wants to pull me in the hallway, I have a really cool story about a fun one when I was in my 20s. Anyways, and I say this not to brag about myself, right? But more to show that you can do this yourself. Andre is the advertising guy. You should try this. What you can do with advertising and statistics, like people have sold companies for hundreds of millions of dollars on this stuff, right? You can add a lot of value, whether you're doing it yourself or whether you're going to build something to pop, right? Do an acqui-hire. Fraud is just one side of it. I spent a good amount of my life dealing with threat response, whether I was a service owner at Oracle with global services, obviously get stuck in nation state issues and stuff like that, or whether you're a business owner and people are coming after your equity, right? Either way, you got to deal with it. But the most important thing is that as you externalize your cognition, as you establish the data lake, as you figure out how you want to give models access to it, you end up in this world where you have to protect it, right? And you have to have safety systems inside of here. So first thing inside of here is who's using hooks for Claude Code? You should. Okay, so if you have agentic access to your external brain, like, what would your mom tell you to do? Or what would your grandpa, right? All this stuff your grandpa told you when you're little and you're like, you don't know what you're talking about, you're an old man, right? What's a fun thing that I have inside of here? So in dating, right? If a girl tells you that you remind her of her father, red flag, run, right? That is a daddy wound. That is a trauma bond. That is like, not good, right? And literally it will pop up, right? If a business person that you're doing a business with says, don't worry about something, you need to worry now, right? And if a verbal promise in your transcripts is not in the contract, it does not exist and they will screw you over. So if the story changes, right? And this all started back, that's the reason I started AMUG years ago, pulling up like a beverage supply chain. And anytime you're going to fill like truckloads of something, it takes a massive amount of capital. And I've been doing investment banking consulting since like 2011. So I'm like, okay, I'll try this AI stuff. And Harrison had released this data challenge. which was the first RAG thing. My first experience with RAG, like, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years ago. And so I ended up putting like all the transcripts with this like beverage CTO and all the documents, and I built it into a PR FAQ, which is a little trick from like Amazon people. And then I was going to build that into the pitch decks and investment prospectus, and it found gaps, right? And it found gaps in the contracts. I found fraud. And so I found the guy, they found out that he actually didn't own his factories. He was basically using other people's factories. But these tools, you can put those safety nets in, right? And that can be for your personal life, that can be for your business, that can be for your side gig. Externalizing it is just so powerful. Now, when I talk, the other thing about externalizing it is there's a gap in observability, right? So if you're using Claude Code, if you're using agentic tools, who's actually logging to OpenTelemetry or something? Okay, please start. Yeah, you can do it externally, like in Langsmith. You can load up a Docker container and do Langfuse, which will go into like ClickHouse, which is this amazing like private Snowflake, right? And Postgres, and you can dump your OpenClaw into it. You can dump your Claude Code into it, and you can get every in and out. You can get historical transactions of like everything that you did, right? Now be aware, data retention policy is probably smart if you handle this in a smart way, right? But you can do this, and you should do this, right? It's because everything you're doing can come into something that's visible using a consistent layer. Now, for this, you can basically put the telemetry into a couple of different pipelines, right? So if you have LangGraph apps, they can natively go into Langsmith or any OTel, really. You can put hooks within Claude Code. You can do it to Cloud. You can do it to Langfuse. You can do it to a local file if you want. There's a whole bunch of plugins that'll break down into like markdown tables, right? HTML, Java stuff. And then the cool thing, if you really get into this and nerd it out, and I've done this in the energy space, in both the energy and food and drug, is that, sorry, one of my interns actually found my clicker. It's back at ACC. Got a little distracted here. So you can go into an OpenTelemetry collector, which is actually like a reflector. Is you can collect data, your telemetry, and then you can filter it. You can assign for like security region. You can fan it out into your eval infrastructure. So you can also go into like Prometheus, your PromStack, or Signos, which is like open source Datadog. You get or PostHog if you like that. PostHog is really cool. Oh, I got a phone call coming. I don't know who the heck that is. Nope. So I really highly recommend this stuff. And then, this is at the end of it, a lot of this is about agentic transformation, not the digital transformations. So I talk about my own story as a founder, mainly talking to nerds like me. I say nerds lovingly because I am one. But it's more than, if anyone's old enough to remember, this kind of digital transformation stuff, it was an opportunity to change our business systems, but really our business processes. Now, fundamentally, we're changing this all. Every single person in your organization can be a developer. The people that don't know how to do syntax well, know the business well, or the people that we need to engage. But when we're engaging these people, we need to have safety nets around them. We need to have observability. We need to have explainability. We need to be able to replay. Not only for security, not only to minimize security risks, but on the flip side of that, these are the people that understand our business the best. And so surfacing the innovations, right? Because they may not know how they got there, but they will get there. Andres, you've gotten there. You probably don't know how you got there. Yeah, it's fine. I don't know. Do you think I remember I got there 4:30 in the morning? Right? No, I learned a lesson, right? And so the ability to surface that pattern, because that thought process is a direct knowledge of the business process. And that right there is what McKinsey charges $250,000 for. So if you have access to a loading dock worker that's hacking and building MVPs for the process in your business that handles material to your customers, millions of dollars every day, that's money. That's money. And that might get prompt injected, by the way. You might get a dark mind attack and get your MOE layer reprogrammed to reroute stuff. Like, there's also a security risk, but it's a business opportunity. And us as engineers, us as developers, us as whoever, like, we have a responsibility to execute on that opportunity to spend time with the business people who are learning how to agentically develop, but then wrap them in safety, right? So the other thing that's happening that is really, really important is, this pattern of halfway to AGI with OpenClaw. Who is using OpenClaw? Yeah, exactly. It's like drugs. It's actually like drugs. It's all the good and all the bad. Um, don't do drugs. What's happening? And who's seen like Claude Claw? The features that Claude's coming out with to get its way to OpenClaw? Yeah, it's not there yet. I know. But like, who's using NanoClaw? 500 lines is actually cool. Easy Claw, right? What it's done is create a Cambrian explosion of application architectures. And I think Nate Little from AMUG, he called it and said, like, I expect, where I was at lunch with him and he was like showing me his OpenClaw stuff. I'm like, okay, I get it. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. But like, I need to sandbox this stuff, but like, I get it, right? And the architecture is really great. But that architecture, right, of the API gateway, of the different services, of the soul, right, the ability to handle the hard things that we've been screwing around with for years, like our Slack integration, or Discord, or Telegram, right, to make it usable, right? And that self-improving code portion of it, that's a pattern. That's a top-down design pattern that we're seeing all across the industry. I'm telling you right now, energy companies, regional airlines, like it is popping up everywhere, right? So how do you control this? So one, who has the OTel connector turned on their OpenClaw instance? Open telemetry. It's a logging. It's basically you can log the turns. So every subagent that gets spun off, you can log and see exactly what it does. You can even you can build your own claw that looks at that, like Daddy Claw, right? Security Claw, whatever, right? You can tell your OpenClaw agent to go and actually like query the.
Colin, he has his OpenClaw that he talks to.
What's that?
He has his OpenClaw that he talks to.
Hell yeah, man! A natural voice interface. Which, that's a great example of how quickly these things are emerging. We've been exploring native voice interfaces for like a year now on like an engineering level, but functionally being able to talk to a self-improving system, speak at 220 words per minute without having to think about the typing. Just press. Your grandma can do it.
I've seen people use a guitar pedal to hit it and then start speaking.
Oh, that's brilliant. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I have option one. That's me, right? I write books that way. It comes into an agent, fans out into the different files and whatnot, right? Things are rapidly changing. And so the opportunity that we have, and again, protect against vulnerability, collect the innovation, right? We're in the Cambrian explosion. I don't know if you've seen the tweets recently where San Francisco feels like Wuhan. Yeah. It's happening. We are past the event horizon. We are sliding in. We're to the point where agents are moving faster than us, right? I can't go into it on camera, but I can talk about situations where, like running a business, dealing with litigation, dealing with finances, doing forensic accounting, where like I've gotten 9 months of work done in like 19 days. Yeah, I didn't sleep a lot, probably tell, but like. Getting these things instrumented, getting the visibility, and then using that to, one, control the risks, but more importantly, take the innovations and the learnings and bring that back into the top-down design patterns. Huge amount of opportunity, huge amount, right? So that's really the coordinated cognition thing, right? And you just get into like shared memory layers, stuff like this. Shared memory layers, shared graph, long-term memory and graphs, being able to go through in a shared decision-making process, having like tagging, visibility. It gets into like blow your mind moments, things that you would love to do in an organization with people, but now you can do with those people's agents. So I talked a little about the valuation layer. I won't go into it too deeply, but if you think of the old shift, right? So we test our code. We scan it, we statically log it, right? Well, now we need to evaluate the cognition of our agents, right? Because what can happen when you swap out the model? Cognition changes. It's like your tween turned into a teen, and now they stink, and now they talk back, right? We don't know what the heck is going on, right? Adversarial evals. You can do this with skills. You can do this in your evals infrastructure, but if you're not capturing your logs, if you're not capturing your telemetry, right, you should be trying to evaluate attacking your models, right, attacking its thought process. I do this on the legal side all the time. Pretend you're a litigator attacking against me. I'll be talking about this at the AI and Law Summit on the 27th, right? So you can red team your contracts. I've come up with the tightest contracts I have ever written in my life with 6 iterations of adversarial red teaming, adversarial evals. My legal bills? Whew. I mean, for example, with evidence control, if I would have done this with my old law firm, which was a AmLaw 100 law firm, big, it would have cost me $475,000 for the e-discovery. It would have taken, I gotta open the page, 4 to 6 months with a team of 12. I did in 19 days, and I built the software myself, right? Like adversary evals are like amazing. And then the other thing that when you talk about this concept of runtime judgment, right? So you asked the question what open telemetry was. It's one piece of the puzzle. So if you're using any sort of like like post-hog, Langsmith, Langfuse, right? They both have the log targets, that log drains you can drain to, right? Highly recommend putting a collector in the middle so you can fan out to things. Just allows you to route it, right? But then they also have query APIs, right? So you can pull in, not only can you dump your log targets into there, but you can query what the thought process was before. Think of when you like exhaust your context window. You have a shared memory layer of what happened. Not only on top of that, you can run Elm as a judge, you can run different evals across it, and then post the results into similar databases, either querying through the API or querying the ClickHouse database directly, right? Which is highly performing, especially for dashboards. And so the thoughts on this is you can have a inline eval structure running with your sub-agents, right? So if your claw spawns off a bunch of sub-agents, the master agent can look through and evaluate the entire thought process if it sees there's a high-risk decision that's coming in. You can even do this externally. It's this really interesting application architecture that's emerging. It's incredibly fascinating, and like I'm a big nerd about it, if you can't tell. So my ask here right now, my big thing, I was actually supposed to be in an injunction on the 12th for that litigation case. The person didn't show up for their thing, or didn't respond for their suit, so I get to move forward. So I built this tool chain because me as a founder got sued for over $1 million by my own company on behalf of my other co-founder. I'm winning because I'm doing everything right and I'm in the right. That person actually tendered their resignation, but actually, can we cut that part? Thank you. I don't want to talk about the case. Starting again. Okay, so my ask. If anyone's anyone has any legal or litigation experience or software development experience doing QA, definitely come to me. Looking for contributors for something that's incredibly valuable to me. And the committee currently has MIT license on it and be released in. The goal on this is there's no open protocol right now in the e-discovery segment. It's a $16 billion segment. There is no open solution. In 75% of cases in civil court, which that's where you go into when you're in business, are pro se, so they're self-litigating, right? And so, like, as a community, I'm a big open source nerd. As a user of open source, as a business owner, it's really important to me that I take my lessons and my anxiety at night and not only provide something that added a huge amount of value to me, it allowed me to respond with like a 22 with a bazooka, right? But really to put that out in the community. And there's something bigger here, both for like evidence management, for tying in the different tools I talked about, but for allowing those of us that that get frivolously attacked to acquit, right, to win. So I'm asking for early contributors. If you know anyone, happy to talk. I think 2 or 3 people from the AMO community are contributing. Actually, one of them contributed the domain name, Quit AI, which is really cool for a platform. So again, my name is Colin McNamara. I'm the founder of Self-Improving Code. That is the latest iteration name of, I think, a 26-year-old consultancy that I started back in Silicon Valley as 2-Cup Solution. You can find me at LinkedIn, I'm Colin McNamara, like on everything. I guess Twitter and LinkedIn. And yeah, what questions do you have? I can't talk about specific questions about litigation. Did I go too long?
No, good.
Okay.
Good.
You got AI agents to implement EDI.
Excuse me?
You got agents to implement EDI integration.
Oh yeah, that's easy.
That was easy.
Yeah. So one, you don't have the agents do it themselves. You have them to pop to an API. So you can there's multiple options on this. And for those who don't know, EDI is electronic data interchange. Came out in like the 80s maybe. It's a bunch of like XML forms that you use to literally if you think of like some trucker has a form that you fill out on a piece of paper and this is our purchase order and this is my advanced ship notification. It's a standardized XML format that's not standardized at all. It's different for each trading partner, but it's a way that you execute orders in a simple way. It's used mostly in like parts supply chains and food supply chains, but what it does, it allows your system to clearly understand the business. So like one easy pattern is pop into an ERP system.
Yeah.
Another easy pattern is pop into a hosted platform and just do an API call. Other easy pattern is there's a number of open source projects that'll generate your 850s. There's different numbers for the type of orders and process them, and then expose that as a skill to your agent. And then like what I did on that is I would take in my specific order types and numbers. I convert them to CSV. Right, just so they're easy to understand, and then I'll use them to populate my PO state database. So I basically bring in my EDI orders, then I got a state database of all the orders within the system and shipping and bill of ladings and stuff like that, and then I had reconciliation engines that would go once I had all the data ingested from emails, EDI systems, and all that. They would go and just reconcile it, pop a dashboard, and I get a payment safety report because I did. Put out $500,000 to $700,000 in payments a month. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so we set up the infrastructure behind EDI integration as well as the standardized documents that it has to comply with.
Yeah.
And all that through just the agent.
Well, yeah, and the trick is you write software using agents that's deterministic.
Yeah.
That's covered in tests, and then your tests are covered in tests because the tests written by agents are usually bullshit.
Yeah.
Right. But if you write tests that are covering your tests, less bullshit, and like it's actually it kind of works. And then you have synthetic transactions and all that because half the time the tests aren't as good as you think because it's tests, right? But you end up with either use other people's software or build your software yourself, and then build a skill. And then for the software, hopefully there's a CLI because it's like the easiest way that you can optimize for your context utilization. But then also your CLI is self-documenting. Right, so it's really self-documenting right there. In like I read Python a lot because this is easy, right? And so inside your CLI, it's like self-documenting the different modules and functions that you're calling, right? And so now if you write a feature or function in your software, and then you update the CLI, and then you update your skill, and now you have a chain that your whatever AI agent system is using now. Yeah, so like for me, Quad Code and Codex, right? I just have a little sync that I do within Codex that maps over the skills MD into Agents MD, and have some symlinks that work. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Yeah. So
I have a question about the Active AI. Does the information you submit to it, as well as the output it generates, falls under attorney-client privilege?
Well, yeah, absolutely, and also has it puts the headers on top of it. So one, if you're using this, highly recommend you put some attorney on retainer. So if you're pro se, do not have an attorney on retainer, do not have attorney-client privilege. Now you may have other privileges. Involve your therapist, right? Involve your publisher. There's different privileges and copyright protections that you can legally protect information. But that being said, $5,000 to a lawyer is probably for something. Get a tax lawyer. Get a tax lawyer and have them review your taxes. Boom, you have a lawyer. Mine retired, so I had to find a new one. I got a really great litigator, 5 years in the Attorney General's office, sharp as a tack, right? Writes like a dream, And because lawyers are all about, I'm going to write something that boxes you into like 10 different ways. I've learned so much.
So yeah, it's really, so privilege headers are really important, but also, so for exhibit control, there's a series of skills that I use along with it. And one of the skills that I use is there's an evidence management tool, or evidence management skill. So you kind of got to think about it in multiple stages, right? So one, for evidence control, the thing that's really important in any litigation is to stop the arguments for your opposing counsel. So one, pull everything you can out of Google Vault. So turn on this industry standard e-discovery system, it's $8 a month or $6 a month per user. Turn it on, boom, you have it in Vault. Now, evidence control primarily will pull from Vault. There's an inbox interface in the Vault, so a mail interface, pulls email out, hashes it, PDFs that, hashes that, right? Will they go back in because of belts and suspenders? Because attorneys will always argue about anything. Like, this evidence was properly connected, right? So it goes back in, they uses Chrome CDP, so browser control, logs in, takes a screenshot of the search, then prints out that item. Again, hashes it, all that. For any exhibits that are segmented, like I might have like a 200-page thing, takes I think it screenshots it. I have to look at the code. It takes that page segment of it, cuts that out, hashes it, and does a cryptographic math to show that it came from it, right? So now the whole point of this is because, like, if you submit a petition to the courts that is like AI generated and might hallucinate, you have to sign it, swearing. Like the United States Marine, when I give my word, like I'll die before I break it. It's just how it is, literally. Marine, it's part of the job, die, right? I gave my words, protect the country. Same thing. I'm not gonna swear up in court to something I'm not confident of. So the trick on that is write your code, cover it in tests, make sure it's cryptographically sound, hash it out. Make sure that evidence manifests are generated. You can use AI to generate the manifests and then validate it, again, ideally with another model, right? That's why I use Codex and Claude side by side, right? And then you end up with that, you can generate your attorney briefs, attorney briefings, like highlighted. So I have a series of skills that are basically not only in the Python of evidence control, does it do the same thing every time in the same way? And then the addition that's coming in right now is putting a graph in front of it. So the same things I've used for food and drug, same things I've done for nuclear, that self-documenting, self-auditing, putting a graph in front of it. And then I got to figure out, I want to do zero knowledge proofs. So I can basically have the eval infrastructure not actually know about the evidence, because you can subpoena that, right? But do a zero knowledge proof to be able to do that. I don't have that figured out yet. If anyone's expertise in that, like, yeah, let's play. I think it's really neat. There's a huge amount of like Web3 stuff, especially I'll go nerdy. You do a zero knowledge proof about like a contemporaneous log, you can swear to and attest it, and then use the hash. We'll see if we can test that one in court. But you definitely would need an expert to do that. But then again, this is the really cool part about this stuff is there's the opportunity to use our nerdy selves to do things that haven't been tested in the court system before, right? And then I talked about, so you back it out, tools that are repeatable, that are Python, that are textable, and yeah, you have to look at it too. I spent like till 6 a.m. double checking that petition, that counter petition, the third party petition that came back. Like, do all the tools, but you got to look at it too. But when you have your briefs, when you have the evidence briefs, when you have all your exhibits catalog, it makes it super easy. I can generate an argument in like, I don't know, it took me probably like 30 minutes to come back and be like, here's a new one. Oh, here's some tight language. You can go through it, right? And then the other thing I didn't talk about is I talked about a little bit, but the skills that come along with it, which is to direct your agent and whatever agent logs into this, specifically what to do every time and what not to do. And when you're dealing with evidence, there's things that you're not supposed to do, right? And you can look up what, search from chain of custody rules, right? And you can do this all on your own, or you can contribute and use this stuff. What other questions we got? Did I answer your question?
Yes, and I have another fast question.
Yeah.
What is the name of the event you were talking on the 27th?
Oh, it's the AI and Law Summit at Austin City College. It's at the Rio Grande campus, RGC 3000. They're teaching. They're teaching. I'm advising them as well, but teaching these methods that you can do with like ChatGPT, I guess. But yeah, I prefer like a little more structure around it. But with especially with 5.4, like 5.3 got really really scary. 5.4, it's like okay, Opus. Yeah, use it, think creatively. Do not snip anything out of Opus 4.6, right? But absolutely codex, right? The Opus 4.6 will get like your statutes wrong and stuff like that. Other things that are really powerful is you can build for whatever legal system you're under, that your contracts are under or that you're into. You can build skills that go ahead and leverage a skill for, so like for the T-Box statutes, they're available via API online. But you can basically have skills that are T-Box statutes and like Delaware statutes and stuff like that. So you have everything locally. You put your safety checks around that because like getting your statutes correct. There's like, there's some thought into things. But when you go back and forth between your models with the same tools, so if you have like Codex has the same skill and Claude has the same skill, you can go back and forth, and like that process of going back and forth, either cutting PRs or just having it review a plan or a document. It's really, really cool. And on top of that, another really fun thing is you can do just the same. Does anyone use like Cucumber in the past? You use Cucumber, right? So human language descriptions for test cases. You can do the same thing in your contracts, right? So you can have like the tightest contract language on earth because less words to say the same thing is better in contracts. Less thing for your opponent to argue about. You can put the English description, and then you can write your tests to validate it always across English description. And then when you're actually reading it, you're like, you know what it actually does. So, hi, I'm Colin. Just see what happens when you start your own business. Yeah, I don't recommend it. Just stay employed. What other questions we got? Sir.
I got 3. What's your token bill
My token bill?
per month?
My token bill for the applications that run for Always Cool, they're I don't know, like 50, because they're pretty efficient. The rest of them I run on my Claude 20X in my Codex, so $400 a month. Probably 400 plus like maybe like between 50 and 125 for the other stuff. I'm kind of like, I won't call myself a cheapskate, but the other thing to throw in here is so FraudBot runs on Quint2.5 32 billion parameter. So one of the things that like most of my life, I was 19 years old, I moved to Silicon Valley with like recruiting letters from the coaches at Stanford and this grand idea of like working my way through college, and ended up just like working with researchers themselves and doing like web scale stuff. When you're dealing with like high performance compute or giant hyperscale stuff, you can only like put so many racks in so quick. JVL knows about this, right? You run out of power, you run out of space, and like you actually make money off the shit, right? And so there's this game is like, how efficient can you be, right? And so and I didn't talk about this as much, but when you have your eval stacks open, your observability stacks up, you also have the token utilization, and you can basically go and optimize for cost. It's like a really fun game. And so I've gone down this road, especially in my data lake, local models of like, what's the stupidest model I can put within my optimization, my like enrichment code side of there, like my enrichment agents and stuff. And I will say that like Quint2.5 32 billion parameter, I've been extraordinarily impressed with recently. And so like for like FraudBot, it runs on your local GPU, so you don't send it out to the inference provider. And like more and more like Pico models is something that I think are really, really great. In many cases, because you can really limit what they do and then make sure they do that very well. It definitely it lowers your tax your I slept like 4 hours last night. Sorry. It lowers the amount of code that's open to attack, right? And it lowers the inference cost. It allows you to do more with less. It's like good on all levels. And you had 2 other questions.
You talked about the evaluation layer. What's that from? Right? This is what I'm hearing about evaluation.
Evals. Okay,
Is there the way I heard about evals, but so evals are the evaluation layer that you set up.
Well, evals are run within the evaluation layer. So like if you think of your application or your Claude Code or your Clawbot, right? Claw, whatever, right? It's spewing out a logging stream, right? And that hits a collect a reflector, and then you fan it out into whatever tool that you want to look. You want to evaluate what your agents are doing. Whether it's a coding agent, whether it's an autonomous claw agent, whatever. You're like, what the heck is this thing doing? Is it stealing from me? Is it doing cool things? I don't know. Is it running my token build? Right. So there's different tools that you use for each of those functions. Right. You might take the overviews and throw them into like a Grafana stack because you want to know your token utilization, right? Per application, per graph. You might want to on the energy side, you may want to, like, say if you have a certain reactor type that, there's different reactors, there's like sodium fast reactors, there's light water reactors, there's different models, different architectures, right? If you want to make sure that your agents are generating the right types of reports, one of the common breakpoints is they reference the wrong type of, they're trained on an old reactor type. Whatever. So you might have like a domain specific evaluator checking for those specific things. Maybe there's a specific business case that you're into, or that you have a specific piece of network or systems infrastructure that should act in the same way every time, every way, right? You might have an evaluator that makes sure that happens. Same thing with the agent's infrastructure. And then when you do get into the point where you're more than just like looking at your code for your agent and then testing it, but you're taking 2 steps back. And maybe you're using DSPY and self-evaluating and self-growing or self-improving, or you're doing it with like graph, and then you're running tests, A/B tests. You're like, okay, here's my agent config A, here's my prompt A, here's prompt B. We're going to evaluate whether this actually works better or not. Or maybe I'm swapping in a lower cost model than the current one. What is the performance of this? So it's both used for like increasing the function, but then also decreasing the costs. And what I've seen, like Novabank out of Brazil did this, where they went from like 50% on their evals to, for code evals, 50% accuracy to outperforming the accuracy of their humans. And it took about 6 months. But you end up in this process where just the same as you would have a CI pipeline that's well tuned, that's giving you feedback, you can do the same thing with agents. Did I answer your question or did I just talk?
Well, I'm more interested about having, I guess, I don't know, I always thought that eval was like little atomic bits that you have to double check all these things, all that stuff. But I think the key word is a layer, should be like a data plane or an evaluation plane, and have it fully stacked with agents, and that's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool tools, and you're going to use different tools for I avoid RAG as much as I can because it's neat, but it's also a time suck. It's like I feel like, and sorry if I'm insulting anyone, but if you're like an enterprise customer and you just want to like do something for a year, you can optimize your RAG. Versus there's other ways you can apply memory and different things to your agents, and it's useful. It's a tool, but like it's a time suck. But like there's different things there's different tools that you could use to like look at your RAG performance versus looking at prompt performance, and looking at like how your embeddings are working. And so there's different tools for everything. And so you fan out and let them run, and then you pull up into a centralized reporting database or data set. You can basically use that to improve. It's a new thing.
Yeah. And the last question is, can you share your slides? Are you gonna share your slides?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll share your slides. I'll know too what's the best way.
Yeah.
Cool. Absolutely.
Jay, this is a same Ben you mentioned earlier, April 1st, AIMEG.org for more talks like this.
Yeah, what?
AIMEG middleware user group.org. The site's not updated since December, but at the bottom it's got all this board and meet up with people.
Yeah, if anyone wants to volunteer to update the site, I got a little busy starting in December. But yeah, we're on meetup.com, and all these days I'll put it on the web. Thank you, JBL.
When you did your ERP, did you consider taking an open source project and then just kind of customizing it to your particular needs? Or
Did I consider using an open source
yeah,
project?
like Voodoo or something?
I did. And I actually started Voodoo, and I have PTSD from working with Oracle. Like, it was a whole bunch of like database roles and stuff like that, and a bunch of stuff that I didn't need, and it's a bunch of code that I didn't need. And the thing about like what the young kids are doing, they're not making software the way we used to. They're just refactoring every 90 days. completely, right? This is a paradigm shift. And I spent like a couple of months dicking around with Odoo. And I was just like, and I love open source projects. I'm the guy who was doing Plugfest back in '97, right? My ISP I ran. Like, hey nerds, come in the back room. We got a T1, right? It was just, there's just so much like cruft around developing using it, and where 4:30 in the morning, I'm about to lose my home. If I don't get this fixed, okay. I can't believe this barely works, right? It's like barely holding together. Okay, let me work on it a little more, right? And it's just like good enough, good enough, good enough, good enough, good enough, and then iterate with factor, and then it got to the point like, shit, this is actually working. Like, what the hell? Someone might actually buy this, right? Not as a standalone thing, but you know, as part of we did private label manufacturing for, you know, like Sprouts and others, right? There's like that's a golden goose of manufacturing. I mean, this contract's never stopped. That's a SaaS multiplier for $9 million a year in business, right? Think about that valuation. Throw software onto that, that's 5 to 9x.
Yeah.
Right? Software that wrote at 4:30 in the morning that you can write, right? That's a lesson.
Cool.
Cool. Any other questions?
You mentioned the memory briefly. Like do you like semantic, embedding, RAG? You don't like RAG?
Not that I don't like RAG, it just breaks. Yeah.
My robot forgets what I'm talking about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. It's not that I don't like RAG. It's that like, so for the application set on, I like with agents, they love Markdown, right? And I like pre-computing indexes. So like taking me back to like, God, when I was like in my early 20s, I'm working with Dr. Coggeshall, and we have to have the like all the bureau data of all of America. It's like 2006, right? All of it on one SAN array. We have to scan every record of every American, you know, TransUnion, Equifax, all this stuff, and we have to scan it and do the math and do the fraud predictions in like 134 dimensions, I think, which back then was huge, but now I do in my war games. And we had to have the entire transaction. When you're in the financial processing stream, it has to happen in 120, 140 milliseconds. You miss 3, you'll have to punch it out for that. You don't make money, right? So basically would roll from this like MySQL scale out cluster into like an inverted B tree for like highly performant all the way down. So like I'm not the smart one. I just copy what smart people do. But this concept of like pre-computing summaries and indexes of the data that I can validate how where I can validate it, and then do like tools like QMD are really cool, where you can externalize this, but then always go back to a verifiable source. It's something just like for me inherently, it's just there's a lot more trust when it's my money on the line versus something that occasionally hallucinates and I have to spend like half of my day troubleshooting some damn database. Right? Did that at Oracle. Don't want to troubleshoot the damn data. So probably why I'm like, Odoo, you know, great project, love the people, but a little too complicated for me. So, and then when it comes to what I think is really like, oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. Ricky Peruccio talked about this recently, where he has Claude Mem's a project. And what he did with that, which I think is really interesting, is he hacked it a little bit and he runs it on his 4090. So all of his dev agents have access to that. Other pattern that I've seen, and I can't name the customer, but very, very smart people, is establishing a graph database for long-term memory and then optimizing indexes of the graph database. So you kind of think of like multiple stages of memory. If your context is your most recent memory, and then you have tools that access memory on your file system, which honestly, like memory on a file system is really easy to do. It's really easy to move into a sandbox. You know, there are tools like Git, and there's other tools that some people I know are releasing really soon. They're like super high speed versions of that stuff. Can't go on, I'm embargoed, so I won't talk no more. But there's people that are innovating in this space of moving files around using stuff that bring the short, medium, and long-term memory into an agent in a really interesting and usable way, and tying that in with like graph databases that implement ontology And Stephen Tran, CTO of, God, I wish I remember the name of his business right now. He's over at Antler, has really got me on this ontology track. But when, like, we all have a perception, we have different perceptions, different histories, different technology focuses and experience, and that we use those pointers internally to describe how we use technology. But then we have a shared ontology, a shared word and description of things that we use to help each individual ones of us. So like when Andres is talking about something he's vibe coded, but from a marketing perspective, he uses different words to describe them. He might actually use them in his own mind in Spanish. Yeah, see. And JBL, from a COO perspective, like the high-end service provider build-outs, right? He's going to have a different set of words and descriptions that he's using to describe the same concept. And the powerful thing of externalizing and centralizing memory in a graph like that, that's available to all your agents, is we can map those different ontology mappings into a shared ontology for the organization and allow each agent, each different group of agents, each sub-organization, each business partnership that we bring in to be accessible in a very simple, easy to describe ontology that maps very neatly into our large language models. And I'm not sure if that would answer your question clearly, but I'm trying to figure it out myself. But hopefully it actually caused a lot of questions in your head.
It gave me some notes.
Cool, awesome. I didn't come prepared for a memory talk, and my memory sucks.
It seems like nobody has fixed the memory problem.
Well, I don't know if it's fixed the memory problem. It's yes, it's a problem statement first in pure software development terms, but it's this beautiful, rich opportunity for enhancing our application structures in a way that doesn't burn a lot of GPU, doesn't burn a lot of time, but is this area that, especially with the ontology in the business context, allows us to really explore this value. And I talked earlier about the loading dock worker or the marketing guy like Andre, right? That vibing it up, right? And so as we start to explore really define the ontology of our agent infrastructure, ontology of our organization, and we can distill that down into our graphs. And it's kind of what I did with FraudBot, right? Using the ontology of fraud to describe at one layer what the statistical expression was pulling up before. And once I have the ontology of fraud, now I have a simple words that I can communicate with any agent that's controlling it. I don't have to know statistics. I don't have to know the specifics about a business. I don't have to know the specifics of a tech, right? It's just like this really highly efficient way of managing context across all your infrastructure. Managing context, managing cost, right? Improving effectiveness and efficiency. So yeah, it's more than solving the problem. I just think it's just really interesting thing to unpack in our minds, to experiment on, to discuss and present back. And so as we do that, we really progress further in that space.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.